You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, folks, segment 2 here. Still Andy Patton, still joined by Parker Ainsworth for Locked On Cougs, and still talking about this Houston basketball program. We talked about last season's tremendous success being a one possession away from potentially winning a national championship. We talked about the offseason and really kind of want to get into this roster. And it's easy to focus on the newcomers and the departures. Like we said, 4 graduating seniors, 1 key player in Terrence Arsenault out the door in the transfer portal, and the additions. But Parker, I think the key thing, and I've misquoted this multiple times before on this show, but I believe it was Trilly Donovan, who is a phenomenal college basketball insider that we don't know who it actually is, but he said the best gets sometimes are the ones you already have. And to me, that feels very true for Houston. Is the kind of ceiling and floor for this team feel, to me at least, like they're going to be determined not as much by the newcomers, by the freshmen, by the transfer, but by the returners, specifically getting Jojo Tugler back, getting Milo Suzon back, getting Emmanuel Sharp back. I mean, those are 3 starters, key players, extremely talented players. I mean, all 3 of them could at least be tangentially in the conversation as All-Americans. Jojo Tugler could be the defensive player of the year. I mean, to get that level of talent back, as well as some key reserves, guys like Mercy Miller and Core Jefferson and Ramon Walker, to get that back in an era where a lot of teams are not able to do so, feels like a huge, critical part of this upcoming season for the Cougs.
Yeah, and you mentioned that all 3 of those guys are starters, Jojo, Emmanuel, and Milos, and I would point out they played a lot of games together. Emmanuel missed like a week's worth of, I think it was 2 games, whatever, of basketball in the middle of the season with an ankle injury. But Tugler played through some stuff last season. They played a lot of basketball together last season. Jojo's going to be on the short list of people that are nominated for Defensive Player of the Year nationally next season. He was in the running last year. Yeah. Emmanuel Sharp was a 14 points per game kind of guy, and both he and Milos were over 40% from 3. You're returning a lot. And I think the biggest piece is the off the court stuff, with Emmanuel being a 4-year contributor in this system. As a freshman, he was the first guard off the bench for the 2023 team, right? And so he understands Sampson basketball, understands the culture that Sampson's built. And ultimately, I think this is a big year, even if it's not necessarily in statistic production we see, it'll be a big year for him in the program.
And I think that experience back in the system, I mean, not just having one returner who's been a 4-year guy is critical. It's so important to be able to kind of develop that talent and kind of help the young guys along and learn Sampson ball. But to have 3 of them is so valuable because it also puts less pressure on this freshman class, which is what I want to talk about. This freshman class, we've alluded to it, we've touched on it, we've teased them. For those who don't know, there's 3 top 20 players in the 2025 recruiting class, all set to join Houston this upcoming season. You got a 5-star center in Chris Senac Jr., 7th ranked player in the class. He's very likely going to start for this team. And then you have 2 guards, a 6'6" wing in Isaiah Harwell. He's kind of a 2-3 hybrid, a 4-star number 16 in the class at 247 Sports. And then you have the point guard Kingston Flemings, 5-star or 4-star kid from San Antonio area, 6'3" guard number 20 in the class. So you have these 3 freshmen who are all day one contributors. They're not all going to start necessarily, but there's a good chance 2 of them do end up starting. All of them are going to play a lot of minutes. And to me, having so many guys who've been in the system already is vital. I don't know that this works for any system. I don't know if it works in the modern era without having multiple guys who can say, hey, this is what we do. This is how we do it. This is what it looks like. And look, you can trust me because I've been a contributor for 4 years, like Sharp, or I've been in the system for a couple of years. I went to a national championship with this team. It just feels like that's such an important part of this group. But my gosh, Parker, these 3 kids are going to be dynamic players for this Cougs program this year.
Well, and I think it's probably also weirdly the part that fans are most nervous about. We mentioned the Jarris Walker 2023 team. The big thing there was everyone's like, how is a 5-star freshman going to interact with Sampson? And bluntly, for a large stretch of the season, he actually played the 6th most minutes on the team, even though he started. And Sampson coached him like anyone else. I think the difference is Jarris is a great example, but all 3 of these kids they signed up to play for Sampson, right? Like they know what they got into, and bluntly, they had a lot of options, right? Like they could have gone a lot of other places, Big 12, SEC. I know you cover Gonzaga as well.
WCC.
Yeah. They all had options, and they chose to play for Coach Sampson, to play for a particular style of basketball, to work on particular things, and to get coached a particular way. There's no way to beat around the bush on that. And while that's not what a lot of 5-star potential one and done kids like CNAC projects to be sign up for, I would argue that Jarris Walker, I mean, his contributions were limited because they ended up being an NBA Finals team right away, but he was a part of an NBA Finals team right away. Like, that's also the way that coin goes. Jamal Shed, right? You can look at him too in a different way, and Mark's, all those guys, but the most direct comparable guy being Jarris Walker is a fun case study. I do think, like you're talking about, eventually to start. I'm sure we'll get into it throughout the show and look at what lineups could look like and so on. But if you're going to lose LJ Cryer, all-time Big 12 player, he won the conference 4 times between Baylor and Houston. Jawan Roberts is your all-time leading wins guy at the university. Just an ultimate culture guy. Javier Francis, Malik Wilson. If you're going to lose those 4 guys and the contributions they got, it's hard to pick 3 freshmen better. And we should point out, like, Bryce Jackson is not some scrub. He's the 4th freshman in the bunch. He was an all-area player in the greater Houston area, had his own injury history. He was a highly touted recruit too. He's just not in the top 20, so we didn't get talked about the same way. Right. We should probably make sure we throw his name in.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's you know what you're getting into when you play for Houston. And if you don't at this point, it's on you. I cannot say I know what every conversation that coaches are having with recruits looks like. Obviously, I do not. But I have a feeling that Kelvin Sampson is not hiding what his system is like and what he is like as a coach. If you are not somebody who wants to play for a coach who coaches the way that Sampson does, for a team that plays the style that Sampson does, you're not going to go there. And obviously every program has guys who come in and it doesn't work out and they end up leaving, but Houston doesn't get a lot of guys who come in and it's clear immediately, like, oh, that wasn't going to work. Like, usually you kind of know what you're getting into. And the best programs are like that. Again, I'll use my team as an example. Like, Gonzaga doesn't have a lot of guys who seem surprised by what they're getting into, because you know what the system is going to look like. And Sampson and Few are guys who've done this for a really long time. You can throw Izzo and Patino and other guys in there as well, of like, they don't have a lot of players transferring out of their programs because of that. And even guys who do transfer out, somebody like Arsenault, it was like, he was there for multiple years. He put in work, he put in time, he dealt with injuries, and ultimately it was kind of him or Sharp, and Sharp played more minutes and kind of earned that role. But like, it didn't feel like this is just like a misfire or something like that. And so if Sampson is right, if these 3 guys are the dudes that they seem like they're going to be, and they adjust well to playing for his style, I mean, the upside for this team seems tremendous. I mean, you talk about Isaiah Harwell is an absolute beefy 6'6" wing. He's really versatile offensively and defensively. I think his upside is extremely high. Fleming's a very, very good point guard, a good distributor, again, from the kind of the San Antonio area out there. I know you saw a lot of him playing as well, and I know you've spoken to him. And Senac, is a guy that's top 10 in this class and considered, in a class that's outstanding. I mean, everybody talks about the big 3 in Boozer and Peterson and Dibansa, and then Nate Amen and Mikael Brown. But it's kind of right after that is where you get Senac and some of these guys as potentially being some of the most impactful players in this class. I guess my question to you, Parker, out of all of that is, in a system, we saw Jarris Walker, and Jarris Walker played, like you said, the 6th most minutes, but Sampson does not have a rich history of relying super heavily on freshmen. Is that something that you are concerned about going into the year, knowing that no matter how you slice it, these 3 players are going to be very, very important to how this team does this year?
Yeah, I mean, bluntly, they're probably just initially intuitively going to be in the top 7 of the rotation, however you slice it.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I want to say the common quote you see like every Sampson player say online, every interview you ask him, is one of his favorite Kelvinisms or quotes is, you know what the best thing about being a freshman is, son? And they're like, what, coach? Is like, you turn into a sophomore. Like, there's some aspect of like this thought that like, okay, Sampson just really, like, you got to spend a year learning what we do. And some people are like, well, Kingston Flemings will redshirt because that's, and I'm like, I don't think any of that's going to happen. I think they're just going to have to expedite the process. And full disclosure, they've got another tough non-conference slate. They play Auburn in Birmingham. They play in the Las Vegas in NIL players area again. We could be looking at being 4-3 at the end of November again, and still be national championship contending good. I think that there will be learning on the fly done. There will be rotations altered and things like that. I don't think this team will be some finished product come December. And frankly, in more Kelvinisms, he always says, like, you should be playing December basketball in December and be playing January basketball in January. And you hope to be playing April basketball in April, right? Like that's the way it goes. And I'm totally fine with that as someone who's seen it play out. I understand if you're like you're new to the spiel or whatever, it might not be the most reassuring, but it's played out that way several times for him. I think he understands how it works.
Looking at the starting 5 projections for this team, again, we've teased it a few times. In my mind, at least, and I assume you'll agree with me here, the 3 returners, they're going to start. I think you can write it in Sharpie that you got Uzan, Sharp, and Tugler in the starting 5. I think that's an absolute lock. And then after that, that's where it gets a bit of a question mark. Do you have 2 freshmen in the starting lineup? I assume that Chris Senack is going to start. He's a top 10 recruit, and their depth at the 5 position after him, assuming Tugler plays the 4, is kind of weak. They have Khalifa Sacco, transfer from Sam Houston State. Decent player last year at Sam Houston, averaged about 8.6 boards, but he's not going to start over a top 10 freshman unless something is very seriously wrong. Same with Jacob McFarland, who's been dealing with a lot of injuries. So to me, Senack's kind of the starting 5 de facto, I think, in a lot of ways. And then it's that last spot. And Parker, you and I have talked about this a couple of times because I've seen a ton of different projections. In fact, I know that the last time you and I talked on a show, John Rothstein's updated top 45 that he does, I think he had one of the returners starting. I think it was Ramon Walker. It might have been Mercy Miller starting. But then now he recently changed it, and it's Kingston Flemings. I think it's going to be Isaiah Harwell. I think it's going to be Uzan, Sharp, Harwell, because I think Harwell's big enough to play the 3 at 6'6", and he's got a lot of size on him. And then Tugler and Senack. That's my projection, but obviously there's not a lot of people who are super certain about what's happening with this starting lineup, at least not that I've seen.
Yeah, I think the one freshman you can kind of start to, it might be Penn, not Sharpie, but is Chris Senack. I think he'll actually be more of what we feel like is a 4, and Tugler maybe more we feel like it's a 5, but that's semantics at that point, right? I will say that there is talk about Chase McCarty, who is a 6'6", he feels more like a wing guy, an IMG Academy, Brewster actually Academy product, and he was a redshirt last year. Apparently there is like a lot of rotational work that has him like as a small ball 4. So I don't think that it's going to be just the freshman. Like it's not like Senack's going to play 38 minutes, anything like that. You mentioned starting at the other spot. I wonder if they start the year with Mercy Miller there. Mercy Miller has a year in the program, had some really bright spots last year, can score the basketball. Let's score the basketball. And as a year of time on task, we saw last year's program, as great as Jojo Tugler was, he did not start the year. Javier Francis did. It was his leadership opportunity. He was a senior. And ultimately, it was very obvious that they were better when Jojo Tugler was on the floor to start, and then bringing in Javier Francis kind of as a wild card and an energy guy off the bench. I think Mercy Miller can do that exactly. I think Harwell's talent he's just a bigger guy, a longer guy, and probably a better shooter. I don't know if he gets the rim quite as well, but I think that he'll win out in that way and take that 3 spot, that wing spot eventually. But it's going to be Mercy's, I think, to start the year, and I don't think he's going to hand it over or anything. I think he's going to be fighting to hold on to that spot, and it's going to be competition breeds the best part of this. So I think it'll be all right for Houston, but I think they start Mercy to start the year.
Mercy was going to be one of my picks for like a X Factor breakout on this team. So I think you covered it perfectly. I think he's a guy, like you said, we saw some glimpses from him last year. And if he's good enough that he doesn't force the hand, that's a really, really good sign for Houston's overall depth and talent going forward. But you touched on it a little bit as well, Parker, and this is what I want to move to next, because a lot of Big 12 teams, and we talk about this a lot on the show, but a lot of those teams, they schedule pretty weak non-conference slates because they know that they're going to have a strength of schedule in the conference. Houston does not subscribe to that belief. They have 3 SEC teams on the docket. They got some really, really fun games on the schedule. We're going to talk about that and make some predictions for how we think this Houston team's going to do entering the 25-26 season. All that coming up here in just a second.